NSFW, what is the scariest theory known to man? We are actually the most advanced beings in the universe right now. And the fear of invading aliens taking our planet for resources is actually just the fear of what we will become. As scary as this is, I think it's fun to think about. I like this one. Yeah, one day, we will be mass murdering alien races. Their kids hiding in the basement as we vaporize their parents. I honestly hope we form some kind of galactic UN that can and will use military force to protect those who cannot protect themselves. John Douglas, a former chief of the FBI's elite serial crime unit and author of Mindhunter, says a very conservative estimate is that there are between 35 and 50 active serial killers in the United States at any given time. Yeah, but isn't a serial killer defined as someone who's killed a minimum of 3 people on separate occasions? A serial killer could just as easily include a street gang member who has killed 3 of his rivals at it. I'm using the FBI's definition, which is presumably what is used in developing an estimate for how many serial killers there are. The term serial killings means a series of 3 or more killings, not less than one of which was committed within the United States, having common characteristics such as to suggest the reasonable possibility that the crimes were committed by the same actor or actors. There is a theory which states that if ever anyone discovers exactly what the universe is for and why it is here, it will instantly disappear and be replaced by something even more bizarre and inexplicable. There is another theory which states that this has already happened. Douglas Adams, so it's a giant complicated riddle. But this theory disproves itself. This would mean that the answer to the riddle would be the riddle itself. For me, it's solipsism. Easiest way to explain it is with a quote from Wiki. Solipsism, the philosophical idea that only one's own mind is sure to exist, as an epistemological position. Solipsism holds that knowledge of anything outside one's own mind is unsure. The external world and other minds cannot be known and might not exist outside the mind, as a metaphysical position. Solipsism goes further to the conclusion that the world and other minds do not exist. Basically, every person you see, including family and friends, are possibly figments of your imagination, and you can never know for sure. I've heard it said that there could be a spooky skeleton hiding in every one of us. Out of all the theories here, this one is by far the most spooky. That any computer to be able to pass the Turing test would also be able to see that it would be a bad thing to do so. That there could be a machine right now that could act as a human but is also intelligent enough to know not to let us know it could. Unlikely, after all. Human intelligence and wisdom are not the same thing. If a computer is able to pass the Turing test, it would not necessarily have the experience, wisdom, to realize that doing so might be harmful to itself. So seen by the fact that very naive and or stupid humans exist, that's not what the Turing test tests. From Wikipedia, emphasize mine, the Turing test is a test of a machine's ability to exhibit intelligent behavior equivalent to or indistinguishable from that of a human. If the evaluator cannot reliably tell the machine from the human, Turing originally suggested that the machine would convince a human 70% of the time after 5 minutes of conversation. The machine is said to have passed the test. A machine passing the Turing test doesn't necessarily have to have any kind of self-awareness if its programmer is a good enough bullshitter. The brain in a vat theory. The brain in a vat is an element used in a variety of thought experiments intended to draw out certain features of our ideas of knowledge, reality, truth, mind, and meaning. It assumes the following: that the brain is the origin of all consciousness. The brain operates on electrical impulses. External stimuli can affect the way the brain operates. Any external stimuli to the brain can be simulated to a degree that the brain cannot distinguish these simulated stimuli from natural stimuli. The point is that you could be a brain in a jar, being fed false impulses for your entire life by an external source. Or you, still a brain in a jar, could be hallucinating your entire life from lack of stimuli. There's a theory that our universe is in a false vacuum that will eventually collapse and completely destroy or ultimately alter our universe. That would mean that no matter how far we develop, no matter how many planets we'll settled, and no matter how many medical feats humanity will have accomplished, we would have a deadline where we would be forever deleted. That Donald Trump could be elected president. That's not scary. He's too crazy to get anything done. He'll peter out, resign, or otherwise make a mockery of the office while we get a good reality show out of it. I like to comfort myself with lies, by the way. Edit reading all the responses. I think maybe some 50% of you had no idea what I meant by my last sentence. Virtually all of mankind's fears, falling, spiders, etc., are based on things that were threatening to our ancestors. So keeping this in mind, why do so many of our images of monsters and demons look the same? I'm forgetting the name of the theory right now, but the theory follows something along the lines of this: the sole reason for every single human achievement throughout history is due to our innate and deep fear of death. We are beings that think beyond just instinct and understand that everyone human will cease to exist. This fear of non-existence has driven us to create everything we have made today, kinda the opposite of the will to power theory in psychology. Well, every human is innately aware of their own mortality, so every human goal has been about survival, essentially. Makes sense to me. Neil deGrasse Tyson's greatest fear is that aliens have already found us and decided we are too primitive to be worth contacting. You could be stuck in a time loop right now and you would not be able to notice it, let alone escape it. This doesn't bother me in the slightest. If this is life infinity for me, cool, hasn't bothered me in the slightest, and frankly, I'm cool with being given a second shot. That a previous blood donation could be an ABR right now. That space is a lot like a jungle. We're basically here on Earth, shouting out into the darkness with our satellites and technology. We're telling whatever might be out there exactly where we are. But in the jungle, monkeys don't try and contact tigers for good reason. We have no idea what's really out there. Most of the time jungles are noisy places, filled with the calls of various animals. Some monkeys will even give out warning calls at the sight of a predator. There are very few things that will make a jungle go silent, or cause all of the fish on a reef to suddenly flee. None of them bode well for a careless human interloper. Let's hope space isn't like that. The Berenstain Bears theory. Go to your mom's house sometime and take a look at all those old books, and you'll see that the name is, and has always been, Berenstain. With an A. Don't you feel stupid now for misreading it throughout your whole childhood? Well, one theory states that the Berenstain dilemma is a small side effect of our universe intersecting with a parallel dimension sometime in the 90s. And everyone who remembers the bear's original surname are experiencing residual memories from another dimension. The first time I heard this I thought I was crazy because I distinctly remembered the original spelling with an E, because I always pronounced it Berenstein. Edit. To those writing off the spelling difference as a careless discrepancy between publishers, the books were not named for the bears themselves, but rather for the authors Stan and Jan Berenstein, or Berenstain, depending on which dimension you lived in, which means one effect of the dimensional shift that supposedly happened only a few years ago was the altering of the Berenstein family name at some point in the past. Those who remember the name with an A are simply remembering the new timeline. The scary robo-basilisk thingy. The idea that if we don't help an AI to be made now, when it is made, it will punish those who didn't help it and punish the ones who knew about it and decided not to help it more. So if you are reading this, you could get more FD by a robot. Edit. Added name so you know it's scary and you know you are dooming yourself, instead of me dooming you, etc., etc. Definitely the great filter theory, as it makes us look like naive simpletons merrily rowing towards the edge of Niagara Falls, singing all the way. There's something extremely frightening about hubris, especially on a species-wide level. The thing with this theory is that it's extremely elegant and straightforward. This raises the frightometer considerably, too. Anyone else looking through this thread for something but just don't know what it is? The great filter. There's a point in societal development where most societies collapse. This is why we don't see sign of extraterrestrial life, aside from the sheer, mind-bending distances. There are a finite number of patterns in the universe, and eventually they must repeat, a la monkeys and typewriters. Therefore, given enough time, the pattern of molecules and atoms that make up your physical body will repeat, bond together, and you'll wind up alive and conscious somewhere down the line. Where and when you might end up are a mystery. You could respawn on an ice planet and freeze to death, only to respawn on a volcano planet and burn to death, for all eternity or until the universe ends. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notification. See you on another video. Bye.